Hello, everyone, and welcome back to WABAN, the movie and TV show podcast where an expert on subject discusses things with the average viewer. I am your host, Nim, and I am joined here today by Terry McGinnis.
I was really hoping you'd do like Batman or Joker because I could do one of those, but
I'm pretty sure I've done that before already.
Probably. yeah. With what was it, The Dark Knight that we watched? You did. I think you did Joker, and I was like, it's about savoring all the little flavors, all the little sensations.
Oh, that's a different Joker. That's a very different Joker. So you could do in this. If I did it again, you could do like the Mark Hamill Joker.
I would have just gone.
Ha 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 ha. So we watched Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker. What are your initial thoughts?
I remember watching it as a kid and always like seeing what they turned Robin into kind of thing and being like, oh yeah, they can't kill in this. Well, they did kill the Joker in it, but, it's something really screwed up that happened. They didn't need to show blood for. It was fully, within the realm of what they could do for a kid show.
Yeah.
And they took advantage of that.
It's been said that this is the most, dark, kind of screwed up scene in all of the DC animated universe. Mm-hmm. Which is probably true. I haven't seen all of the DC animated universe, but I've seen a lot of it in my time, and from what I remember, it probably is. As soon as he shoots him, and then he just starts laughing, and that laughter turns into crying and just a complete breakdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's kind of an interesting, it was the last thing the Joker ever did was the most messed up thing he ever did, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the most messed up thing he did directly to Batman.
Right.
Right. Because this version of Batman doesn't include Jason Todd, so it doesn't include the Death in the Family storyline, which is Joker kills Robin brutally. So they I guess this was maybe their attempt at doing that sort of thing where it's Joker does something really messed up to Robin. Doesn't kill him per se, but and it's not Jason Todd. It's because this version doesn't even include Jason Todd at all.
Right.
But yeah, so I thought maybe this was their way of trying to tap into a little bit of that basic concept of that storyline.
Scarring the whole idea of Batman forever without the actual death.
Yeah. Which I thought was done really well. Because there's, right off the bat, there's this mystery around the Joker's death and what happened. And the thing is, at this point in the universe, it's never really been confirmed how the Joker died.
Right.
There's been many stories in this universe where it seems like he dies, but he doesn't really. We watched Batman Mask of the Phantasm at one point, and that takes place in this universe as far as we know, and it's he seems like he died, but he didn't, and there's countless other times where it's but this is the official canon definitive death of the Joker in the DCAU, at least not in not in other versions of the story. So
it's a bold move to actually kill him off.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and have Tim Drake do it, not even an older version of a child, while Tim Drake is still a child, because
well, first of all, just killing off the Joker, he's the main Batman villain.
Yeah.
So doing that, like, risks a lot, but it also really paid off in this movie, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Well, because throughout the Batman Beyond series, obviously there's never, the Joker's never around, obviously, because, this is like the first time the Joker comes back since he died. Mm-hmm. But there is like this gang that are known as the Jokers, that appear in this movie, obviously. And that's kind of the only real connection you have to the Joker in that show. But then this movie decided, like, what if we just had Joker come back as Mark Hamill? Like the Mark Hamill Joker. Which I think was handled really well, considering it could very easily have become a cheap gimmick of, like, we're bringing back the Joker. Because when you look at the show Batman Beyond, I mean, I don't know how much of that if you ever seen much of that show or not.
Only like bits and pieces as a kid.
Yeah, you probably didn't remember much. But that show pretty much like never brings back classic Batman villains. Like, it's all kind of new, completely new villains for the most part. There are occasionally, if I remember right, parts where they bring back like newer versions of an older villain or something, but they never, like, really, which I think is one thing that a lot of people have pointed out is, like, makes it almost slightly weaker than, like, the Batman the Animated Series. Is like, they're not, because Batman the Animated Series obviously is able to pull from this amazing rogues gallery of some of the most classic villains of all time. Whereas, like, because Batman Beyond, the show, uses completely new villains, it does, the villains aren't quite as strong because it's very difficult to make, because Batman does, as we know, have the most legendary rogues gallery of all time, right?
I mean,
as in any comic book.
I mean, I would argue that Spider-Man's is pretty up there too, but.
Yeah, Spider-Man is probably, it's always between Batman and Spider-Man as far as, like, who has the best villains of any superhero. So for them to just, in the movie, just be like, yep, it's about the Joker coming back, very easily could have been just a cheap gimmick that was just done just to, like, get people to watch the movie. Just be like, the Joker's back? Like...
Yeah, I was worried about that throughout the movie because, like, I don't know, like you said, it can be just a cheap gimmick. Like, they could have just had him appear, not really given it an explanation, or given it a really poor one, or not given any backstory about it. And
or
it just
not done anything interesting with it. Just been like, the Joker's back, and that's it, yeah.
But the idea that they reveal how he died, how messed up it is, and use a Robin as his means of returning, that's really well done and really creative.
Right, because based on the backstory you get, it makes sense. Like he says, like, ever since then, this little chip, like, it's been stuck deep in his brain, in Tim Drake's psyche, ever since then, just ready to, like, come out at the right moment, basically, and to slowly take over his mind. Because he says, eventually I'll be able to take him over completely. So it's kind of, and it's weird because it's like the Joker's kind of had always been planning that. So even in that moment where the Joker dies and he's like, that's not funny. Like, it's, which is a very much a line of dialogue that very much tells you, yeah, the Joker knows this is his final breath. Like, he's finally dead. But even then, the Joker had a plan of coming back. He just didn't know about it at the time, which was I
did also really like the build up to revealing the death of the Joker, because like you're constantly wondering, like, well, first he returns like in front of Bruce Wayne and you see the shocked expression on his face, which has a lot of weight to it when you see Batman get surprised.
Right.
And so you're constantly wondering, like, what happened? Why is this such a big deal? Like, I know he looks really young and all this, but, you know, Batman should expect everything. That's part of his character.
Right. And then it's because Batman, like, literally witnessed him die. Like, his body was there, dead, lifeless body of Joker. Like, all the other times where in the series where it seems like maybe the Joker died, but he turns out he really didn't, you never see the body. There's never, like, concrete evidence that he's dead. But this time there was. And I think that's kind of the difference here, right?
Right. And then you go to, like, the next step of it, where Terry starts asking, like, you killed him, didn't you? Which is a logical, like, thought process, and then it puts it in your head as the viewer to be like, oh, is this like the one time Batman overstepped that boundary?
Yeah. And for a moment in the flashback, you think Batman is going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, had Tim Drake not done it, maybe he would have. You know, like, that's another thing is, like, because, you know, obviously what he did to Tim Drake was it was really pushing him over the edge in that scene. Like, he's like talking to the Joker, he's like, I'm gonna break you in half, or like, you know, which, I mean, it's something that I feel like Bruce Wayne says things like that, like Batman says things like that a lot without truly like meaning it. Like, in his head he kind of wants to, but he doesn't actually do it. But maybe this was a time where he would have killed him had Tim Drake not done it, you know.
And then it finally reveals what actually happened, and you're just like, this is so much worse than anything that I've imagined.
Yeah, it's crazy what we're able to get away with in, like, what is essentially a kids movie, you know, like a family movie, you know. Yeah, and yeah, there are, and there's also, like, other interesting things. Like, Bruce Wayne was also, another thing is, like, before you get the backstory, you have that moment where Joker comes back and he's like, Bruce Wayne, and he's like, who would know me better than you? And so you're like, wait, Joker knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, because throughout all of the animated series and, you know, the Justice League, all this animated universe, he never knew that Bruce Wayne was Batman.
Yeah, pretty much.
So you're like, wait a minute. So how did he find, like, yeah, at some point he found out. And then in that backstory, he did right before he died, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of explains that. Which almost really makes it more personal in a way. Just like him knowing, like, I don't know. It just, I feel like it adds something, especially to this story in general.
Yeah.
Obviously it makes it easy for him to infiltrate, you know, and the Batcave in the one scene, because he knows, oh, well, where would Batman's lair be? Well, if he's Bruce Wayne, then it'd probably be under Bruce Manor, or Wayne Manor. Bruce Manor. Wayne Manor. So it kind of, it all kind of, like, pieces together in a way that makes sense,
Bruce
too.
Batman. Shit.
Yeah.
You do have a point to that, though. Like, there is the whole thing of him knowing his secret identity is a big risk now, right? Because he's able to attack all this stuff and, you know, go for people close to him like he actually did in the movie.
Well, but right, and, like, you never... Oh, sorry, you can continue.
Well, there's also, like, the personalness of the... in the flashback, he directly referenced how Bruce Wayne's parents died. And was just, like, mocking him for, you know, saying, you know, it would be funny if it wasn't so sad or pathetic.
If it wasn't so pathetic. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, what the heck? I'll laugh anyway. And then,
Yep. But, like, his entire point was just, like, he viewed it as Batman just being a child crying for his parents.
which is kind of true. Like, that's like the inside of, like, internally, that's essentially what Bruce Wayne is, even to this day.
I
right?
mean, in a way, yeah.
Because it's like he's never let go of that. And it's just sort of stuck with him. I think even a little bit until his old age, like in the Batman Beyond period of time, where he still is like set on this idea of Batman, and like even though Terry McGinnis is Batman now, Bruce Wayne still sees himself as Batman. Like, he still is Batman, right? Like, to himself. And I think there's more stuff in the show and even other parts of the DC animated universe that kind of get into that idea a little bit too, of like, he even at this point in time, he still sees himself as Batman. He still has never fully let go of all of his trauma, which is part of.
Don't you always mention that there's an episode where somebody gets into his head and he like always knew that it was fake? It's like, I don't refer to myself as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, that's an episode, one of the episodes of Batman Beyond. Yeah, he says that to Terry McGinnis, and Terry's like, "Oh, well, you're not Batman anymore," and he's like, "Well," and there's like they have like a whole thing. Yeah. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've watched Batman Beyond, so which I'll probably rewatch at some point. So I did really like it when I was younger, but. Yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing. You start to realize that that's part of what really pushed everyone else away. Right? All of, the Robins, the Batgirl and everything, like he could never let go of this trauma. He was constantly, but everybody, all the others were able to. They were able to move on from just being the costumed heroes that they were, in a way. Like, they all kind of moved on from Batman. And it's like, he has these lines of dialogue where he's just like you don't get it, none of you ever did. Like, he sees Terry McGinnis as essentially another Robin. So
yeah, and then it was like one of the last lines of the movie when he's telling Terry that that Batman doesn't make him a worthwhile person, Terry McGinnis does.
Right. It's like, you are Batman. Batman isn't you. Right. Kind of. Like, Batman doesn't define you. You define Batman. Which is really
of him, like, being like, yeah, I fell into that hole. I am stuck in it now. Don't come join me. Learn from my mistakes.
Yes. And I think that's an interesting point to bring up too, is how Terry McGinnis, the way the character is, really adds something new to Batman that the original Batman never could, right? Like, especially in that final confrontation between Batman, Terry McGinnis, and the Joker, right? Like, he's really throwing the Joker off by, like, playing along with his jokes, making jokes back, laughing, stuff that, like, Bruce Wayne never did. Bruce Wayne was always more, like, silent. He's just the dark, and it like really threw him off, because it's like, he's just like, you're not, and he's like, you're not Batman, and that's sort of what tripped him up and caused him to, like, maybe helped cause him to fail in the fight, right?
Yeah,
because he was kind of thrown off.
I found a lot of similarities between that and the flashback scene, because Joker found out everything about Batman. And like a bully who figures out, what makes you tick, targets Batman with it.
Right.
Then on the flip side, in this fight between Joker and Terry Terry's like now like analyzing Joker, like realizing that he can't handle trash talk back at him, is throwing everything that he can at him, and it's a very like role reversal situation of like, yeah, it all came full circle.
Yeah. Well, and it really sort of shows a new side to Batman that Terry McGinnis is able to bring to Batman, like almost like why he's worthy as being a different, like he's not just a new Batman. He's bringing something different to Batman that Bruce never could, right? Which I think is really interesting, and it's sort of, sort of cements, this movie does a good job at really cementing why Terry McGinnis is a good choice for the next Batman. Like, it's, because like it could have been just any kid, whatever, who wanted to be Batman, who was good at fighting or whatever, but like why he himself is.
Yeah, or any other vengeance-filled nut like Bruce Wayne was.
Right, yeah.
They'd get trapped in that hole again.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. You actually realize another difference between the two is sort of their reason for fighting, right? Their reason for being Batman. So Bruce, it's out of his trauma of the death of his parents, obviously, right? And him, we're gonna make sure this can never happen to a kid again. Whereas Terry's is a little bit different. He's more like, oh yeah, I was a bad kid. I was doing, I was up some punk on the street that would have gotten beat up by the old Batman, and he's like almost trying to like do it out of like atone for what he's, what he's done, kind of. So it creates a very different approach by the two, because it's like, they are, very different in their, which I think is really interesting. And I don't remember how much more that was explored in the show. I mean, obviously a lot of these, ideas are explored more in the show. But I do think the movie is done in a way where like you don't necessarily have to have seen the show to really get into the movie.
Yeah, I definitely don't think so that's the case either, because like I remember an abysmal amount of what I've seen as a child. Like, I remember what that suit looked like. I vaguely remembered some of the Jokers.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
Yeah, well, it's
got a full understanding.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, as long as you have they do enough of like letting you know who the character of Terry McGinnis is in the movie itself to help you get into the story of what's going on. Like, the only real backstory you need to know to fully understand it is like, oh yes, there's a new Batman, and it's like more futuristic, and and he's like a younger, and Bruce Wayne is old now. Like, it's pretty easy to kind of pick up on if you haven't seen Batman Beyond, or like if all you know is the basic premise of it, Right.
I do also like the setting, like just the futuristic setting, because it's not like over the top where they could just do anything, but like, they have these like laser grid fence kind of things. They have all the hovercrafts, the laser guns. They have the big satellite beam. It's like just enough to give all the interesting things that you can think of and give them more creative like material to work with. But it never seems like, oh yeah, we're so far into the future then, we're so stupidly advanced that anything's possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's like just kind of little things, and like just little details of like even like the bat suit obviously is more advanced. Like he can like kind of fly, but maybe not like fully fly. It's more like he gets kind of like a boost from his like, he has like boots that have like rocket, boosters or whatever, kind of give him a boost, and then he can glide more easily than like that Batman was able to do with the cape.
Right.
So it's not like it's not like flying in the same way as like, you know, Superman flies, where it's just like effortless, easy, whatever, move wherever you want. But it's more of like but it sort of makes sense for the more advanced yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also, yeah. Yeah. So, I'm trying to think what else.
You know, we've had a few movies where towards the end we struggled to find more to talk about to fill time. I didn't expect it to happen with this one, in all honesty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like there's definitely more to talk about. It's just hard to think. Well, I guess one thing I do want to say though is like, I really think they did a good job in, you know, the show Batman Beyond, and obviously by extension this movie, and really doing a good job at making it something interesting. Because like the idea of Batman Beyond, the basic concept of Batman Beyond, very easily could have been, you know, a cheap gimmick, similar to what I was saying earlier, where it's like, oh, it's like Batman, but futuristic, you know, like it is that, the show is that, but it has more than just, it's not just like they could have easily just done like, here, we're going to give you futuristic versions of all the classic villains, a futuristic version of this, like, it's all just a way to be like, it's cool futuristic versions of the original show, and that's it. But yeah, I think
it could have been just like a reskin of the show where everybody is cyborgs and be done with it.
Right, but I feel like from what I remember of the show, and you know, you can kind of tell from this movie as well, they do a good job at trying to really make it its own thing. I mean, Terry McGinnis isn't just Bruce Wayne 2.0, right? Like he's a completely different character, and obviously in that, because he's a completely different character, you can tell that based on, you know, just the interactions between him and Bruce, that he's a very, you know, very different person than Bruce Wayne is, and therefore, like I said earlier, you know, really brings a new flavor to Batman that Bruce never could. You know, he's a very he's got like the joking quips like Spider-Man does, but you know, but Batman, which is like weird for Batman, but like, oh, it's not the original Batman, it's a different person, so of course, you know, he's going to be different, which I think is interesting. And then like, you know, he also
he has a life outside of being Batman, for one.
Right, he has a life outside. Like he actually has a girlfriend. That's another good point too. Is like, because with Bruce Wayne, it was always like Bruce Wayne was always just kind of his persona that he put on to like throw people off, so they wouldn't be able to be like, oh yeah, he's obviously Batman. But his true self was Batman, and like he could never get out of that mode of like wanting to constantly do this crime fighting. Whereas again, Terry McGinnis is like, all right, I'm gonna go out late with my, like, he's done with his crime fighting for the night, and he's like, you know, I could go to sleep, or I could do more, like try and something to help me be Batman or something, but no, I'm gonna go out to the club with my girlfriend, like yeah, I do. Yeah, and that kind of almost adds to the whole. It's in a way that does make him feel somewhat like he is another Robin, in a sense. I feel like he definitely isn't just another Robin, I guess. Like he, you know, whatever. But in a sense, because it's like, you know, Bruce Wayne is his mentor, like all the Robins, and also like it's kind of the idea of like Bruce Wayne could never fully be happy. He could never, you know, break free of that sort of, you know, dark, depressing mindset that he has. Whereas he goes on and helps all these other people, the Robins, Batgirl and everything, to move beyond that. Like, I think a perfect example of this is like the first Robin, Dick Grayson, went through a very similar thing, right? His parents were killed, and he very easily could have grown up to become like Bruce Wayne, but through Bruce Wayne's guidance and help, he grew on to become more than that. He eventually becomes the superhero Nightwing, who's like similar to Batman, but without the horrible, dark, brooding, constantly depressed, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's kind of the tragedy of Bruce Wayne, is that he will never be happy, but he uses his what he's got going. He uses his Batman thing to like help others to grow beyond that, what he could never grow beyond, which ends up being, the Robins, the, Batgirl, and in this case, Terry McGinnis, right? Like, but the problem is, in the end, they end up growing beyond him and eventually leaving him to go do their own thing. And it kind of leaves him in this like lonely state, so that by the end of his life, he's just kind of like a sad, lonely man. And it's like, it kind of makes Bruce Wayne's life essentially a tragedy.
He like evolved himself and turned himself into this crime-fighting machine that can get through like any scenario. But as a person, like, he's putting himself under all that stress as, I don't know, you could view it as like a coping mechanism for his parents' death.
Yeah.
And he really never gets past it, because he considers himself to be Batman now. He considers himself to be the person that he created, and not, the person who had his parents killed, or who has this life outside of it. Because that life is the facade to him.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, even in his entire life, he's never able to fully grow beyond that. And it's and fully be happy, become a normal person. One thing I did really like, though, was at the end of the movie. So they talk about how like Tim Drake went on to live his own life, and he never really talked to Bruce again. Barbara goes and sees Tim every now and again, so they still kind of have a friendship going. But Bruce never did. And then there's that, like, it's that final scene where Bruce he goes to see Tim Drake in the hospital, and like Terry McGinnis goes out, and he's like surprised to see him, and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "I should be here," or like, I forget what he said. It's like, I need to, and that was a really nice moment for me, because it was like, maybe there is a little piece of Bruce that's like, I can just kind of like be, who wants to continue to be that, like, I guess, father figure that he used to be to Tim Drake, or something along those lines, and like he is able to, he's putting an effort forth to actually have a real human relationship with people, rather than just rather than just be Batman.
Batman has always just been an interesting character, because of this struggle between him, Bruce Wayne, and him, Batman the superhero. Because like any other superhero, it's either they, trying to think of examples. Superman has that duality. He has a balance. He struggles with it, but there is a balance there.
Right. Well, right. It's not like Clark Kent isn't just a disguise. Clark Kent, is his real human personality. Like, he actually enjoys going out with Lois. He actually enjoys being a human, like, it's not just a thing he puts on to, yeah.
And it's not even like Wonder Woman or someone like that who they just are their superhero persona. There isn't another persona. If they walk outside of that, it isn't as another person. It's just as the woman who is Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
But Batman doesn't have anything like that. What he has is he threw away being Bruce Wayne to be Batman. So he has that scale, that balance scale, like unlike Wonder Woman doesn't. But unlike Superman, his scale is always like broken, completely tilted to the one side.
Yeah. It's well, because like, that's always the thing with Batman, and really is the tragedy of Batman, because he was never able to really have a normal, happy life. So I'm trying to think.
I do like that he, like you were saying, that he tried, because that's where he was needed, is what he said. To be like, to fix that a little bit.
Yeah, like even though like he's in his old age, probably not going to live that much longer, right? Like he's still like, you know what? Like it's kind of like he really learned something from Terry McGinnis. He's not only is he a mentor to Terry McGinnis like is a mentor to him in a way. Like he teaches him some things about like being a normal human being, because like Bruce just struggles with that.
And even before Terry, there's the whole thing of him helping Batgirl and the other Robins to not be like him. Like he realizes that he made a mistake down the line and that people shouldn't be like he is. And he protects them from becoming like that.
Right, but he doesn't really put an effort forth to help himself in that, because he kind of just, he's like, oh, it's too late for me. I'm already like too far down this path. So it's very, very interesting stuff. I don't know. Like I feel like the more and more I get into it, like the more I really like just really find the character of Batman just really interesting. Like it's just I don't know. Like I think there's a reason why he's one of the most, like probably is the most popular superhero, right? Even more so than like Superman or something,
I mean, I could definitely say confidently more than Superman, but that's just personal opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the only like superheroes that I could say are probably maybe have more higher level of popularity than him is like maybe some of the Marvel ones, specifically because of the success of the MCU. I mean, before that, it was definitely 100% like Batman was top superhero for sure, no matter what. Now, obviously, again, ever since the MCU started, Marvel characters have become a little bit more popular because of the success of those movies. But and obviously Spider-Man has always been up there as one of the top superheroes as well. So, but still, I feel like even though that is, the MCU has kind of taken over the superhero genre in recent years, at least as far as movies go, I still think Batman still stands as one of the top, most popular superheroes of all time. And like, if you think about it, like there have been probably more Batman stories in like popular media than any others, right? Like if you think about like especially like in movies, Batman, there are more Batman movies than any other superhero easily.
Yeah. You definitely have a point to all that. If we bar Because we've been talking about this duality of Batman for a while now, but some media and like movies and TV shows sometimes don't capture that. So if we bar those, then like you're 100% correct. But there's also a ton that just be like, that are always just, this is Batman. He's a crime fighting machine. He has a backstory as to why he does it. But right now he is just this, like Terminator style, always marching forward to fight crime, and that's it. That like one-dimensional character that they sort of put him in without exploring the Bruce Wayne side of it and the duality between the two.
Yeah. Is there something specific you're thinking of with that, or just in general?
I haven't watched any recently, but I also haven't watched a ton recently. But I just remember there being a few like different Batman stuff where it's just like, yeah, he has a plan for every situation, and they don't get into like personality stuff at all with him, and it's just kind of gets boring.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could, in a way, say that maybe not all of, but some parts of the Justice League show do feel like that. But that's because it's sort of, that's not a story about just him, that character, right. Just Batman. So it's like, in this story, he is fully this amazing character, Batman, who's always got a plan and blah, blah, and that's it. But that's because that's all he needs to be for that specific story. And because that story is also about other characters. But the thing is, in that show as well, you do still get those glimpses of the personality, the character beyond that. Especially, there was the episode we talked about last week with the where the alternate universe Batman, there was some good moments of that. But so yeah. I definitely see that. But yeah, it's I mean, if you look at the history of Batman, there are also versions that literally don't do anything with the whole interesting lore of the depressed, constant, crime fighting nature of Batman, dark side of Batman, like the Adam West one from the 60s. That's just kind of. But then again, that show doesn't really. That's just like, not even worth bringing up when you're talking about that. That show's just hilarious. But anyways,
is that the really, really old one where it's just like very crappily made costumes, and the Robin just like, holy hostages, Batman, or whatever is in the situation.
Yes. And it's amazing because it's like purposefully really cheesy and dumb, but like so it ends up being hilarious.
I'm so curious about that now.
Yeah, like you should watch the movie they made based on that show. So it's pretty great. And specifically the bomb scene is hilarious. He's like, I may have mentioned this before, but he's like, there's like a bomb. It's like one of those big like cartoonish bombs, like the big like circular black ball bombs with a fuse on it.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to get rid of it because it's like gonna blow up, obviously, and he wants to make sure it goes somewhere where it won't hurt anyone when it blows up. So he's running around trying to throw it and like everywhere he goes, there's like somebody there. There's somebody in the way. He tries to throw it in the water, but there's somebody sitting in like a boat in the water. He can't go there. He's trying to throw it in the water over here. This side of the dock, there's like ducks in the water. He doesn't want to blow them up. Like he's trying. He's going everywhere. And then he just it's literally like it's hilarious. And then he has an amazing line of dialogue. He's just like, some days you just can't get rid of a bomb. which is just one of my favorite lines of dialogue from that movie. Eventually he does get rid of it, and successfully, but
he doesn't just let himself blow up.
No. But that movie is hilarious. But yeah. So I'm trying to think. We're off topic. We keep getting off topic with these. Like I feel like because it's like we'll start talking about the movie, and then because it's like a DC thing, we'll be talking about like other DC things, and we'll be like, oh yeah,
right,
get like sidetracked,
or just like progress through to like the superhero as a whole instead of just this specific movie.
Right. Which is always interesting to get into. But yeah, so I will say I really like Batman Beyond. I think it's an idea, again, that I said could have really become just a cheap gimmick of like futuristic Batman. Whoa. But I think they did a lot to really add to the universe and the lore of Batman.
Oh yeah.
Down to the point where I think the character has been used in the comics since then. Like I'm pretty sure there have been Batman comics made. Like this show was the original version of Batman Beyond. Like it was created in this show. Like the character Terry McGinnis, all that stuff. I'm pretty sure there have been comics based on it since then, which it's really cool, I think, like how much this universe, the DC animated universe, has contributed to like just like DC Comics as far as like new characters and whatever. Like for instance, like Harley Quinn originally existed in the Batman the Animated Series, which is something I've mentioned before. But like also like, this show, Batman Beyond, I'm pretty sure there have been comics, Batman Beyond comics, created after this show was done, because of like, so he's now officially like a character in the comics and continuities and stuff because of, as I'm pretty sure I've heard of Batman Beyond comics.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an interesting concept of like, because usually it's all these movies and shows are based on the comics. But then this has like gradually evolved it into something more and added more characters. And the comics are like, oh, hey, let's also do that.
Yeah, well, it's actually, there's also like other things too. Like, I don't know how much you know about so in a specific episode of the Batman the Animated Series created the backstory for the origin story for Mr. Freeze, which is now, which had never, it was created in that episode of Batman the Animated Series. So Mr. Freeze has been a character for many, many years, since like the 60s, maybe even before that. I don't know when the character was originally created, but what is now considered his definitive backstory was originally created in Batman the Animated Series.
Huh.
Which actually made him a much more interesting character, because before he was just kind of a basic villain. He's a typical evil villain who has like an ice gun and can only survive in the cold or whatever. Well, that was just that specific movie.
I do watch that movie.
But yeah, it's crazy how much like this specific animated universe has contributed to, not only its own universe, but like the comics and stuff. Because again, like, that backstory for Mr. Freeze that was in the Batman the Animated Series is now the like definitive origin story for Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
Even though it never existed, it was created for that show. And the actual episode, which was titled Heart of Ice, is one of the most famous episodes of the show. Won an Emmy or something, I think, for the episode. It was yeah, so it was a pretty legendary episode of the show. That was one of the episodes I did watch as a kid, because I didn't watch. I don't think I've ever watched all of Batman the Animated Series. But like as a kid, I would watch there were certain episodes we watched here and there. Like we would get like a DVD that had like a few episodes on it or something, and we never watched the whole thing though. At some point, I'm going to do that. At some point, I will watch all of Batman the Animated Series.
I have a ton of old like kids cartoons that I watch that I'm just like, I should go through the entirety of those because I remember them so fondly.
Yeah. Well, it's always hard though, because it's like you're always like, okay, which ones are going to be the ones that I watch and I'm like, oh, I still really like that now, and which ones are going to be the ones you rewatch and you're like, oh, this kind of sucks. Why did I like this? Yeah. You never know. It's like it's going to be like Avatar. Yeah, that was great. Well, I didn't watch that as a kid, but you did.
I did.
I'm sure. So for you, that was like, yeah, it's still just as great, if not better. I might even think it's better than I did. Whatever.
Avatar
for
will
me,
always be good.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Whereas, like, for instance, we're watching the Justice League, and like the first season, I still like generally, but I don't think it's as good as I don't think I like it as the first season as much as I liked it when I was a kid. Because I watched the first season like a million times. Second season, on the other hand, it's pretty good so far.
Good. It's pretty good.
Pretty dang good. But yeah, anyways, we're a bit off topic again. So yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say about the movie. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to point out. So in the movie, this is actually a really interesting detail. So, there's that one character who's like working for Wayne Enterprises, who like wanted to take over the company but couldn't, whatever.
Who like vaguely looks like Joker.
Yeah, so they hinted that he might be the new Joker. They kind of like they did a really good job of setting him up as like, oh, maybe he is the Joker, to make you think that he might be, to like trick you. And I don't know if you noticed, but that character was voiced by Mark Hamill.
I was wondering about that because I remember like the identical voice match that Bruce Wayne did, and I was thinking like, okay, so it would like obviously they would have to have the character be the same voice actor, but I don't know, I was trying to listen for it and I didn't actually hear it. Like there were similarities, of course, but
he didn't use the voice thing on that character, though. He just used it on an old clip of the Joker and then, like, the new Joker to match.
Right, that's what I mean, though. Because, like, if that matched, then it would actually have to be, the exact same voice. And so I was trying to listen to him to see if he had the same voice. But obviously Mark Hamill wasn't doing the Joker voice.
Yeah.
So I couldn't hear it.
They definitely did do that on purposely have Mark Hamill to voice that character, because like you don't need Mark Hamill to voice that character, right? Like,
oh no, you
could get any old voice actor to, like, he's not a hard character to voice, right? Like he's not super prominent in the movie, and like he's just some asshole who wants to gain power over the business, right?
Right.
But they definitely, obviously, clearly did it specifically to sort of trick you into thinking that he's probably the Joker when he's not. So
that character exists as a red herring, and it's just to mess with us.
Exactly. They make him voiced by him, and they give him his face, his general facial structure looks very similar to the Joker as well. So it makes you go, maybe. Oh, and he's like the only like character who seems like he could be bad, like, you know what I mean? Like he's the only like, because it's like, oh, he's this asshole who's trying to take over Wayne Enterprises, like, so he's the only one who seems like he could be, and then it's like turns out it's not. So yeah, no, he literally does exist as a red herring, that's for sure. But I just thought that was funny. They went all the way down to the detail of having Mark Hamill voice him.
They went out of their way to do everything they could to trick us to that.
Yeah. Well, because it's like if that character didn't exist, maybe the final, who it ended up being maybe would have been a little bit more easy to figure out. Especially after the backstory. Like, I feel like once you hear the backstory, you're kind of like, it kind of maybe puts in your head, like, what if there's still some of that, like, Joker in Tim Drake's brain?
Yeah, I don't think I actually, like, put that together until, like, we found Tim, like, on the floor of where the Joker was supposed to be. And even then, I was like, but they look absolutely nothing alike. What is happening? And then he, like, actually morphs into the Joker. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right. That's the thing is, like, yeah, it definitely doesn't seem crazy. But it's, like, crazy because he's like, any memory of him being the Joker, I just put it in his brain as, like, oh, it's just a nightmare or, like, a bad dream or something.
Right.
And so it's really interesting. Overall, I just think it's all really done really well. The overall mystery of it and everything, and, like, the fact that the Joker takes control of the Joker gang makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But, like, just uses them. He doesn't really care about them. He just uses them to get to Batman. Obviously, just to get what he wants.
The appearance of Harley Quinn at the very end, bailing out the twins.
Yeah, she's their grandmother. Well, it's said that, like, they never found her body, and, like, so we don't know if she died or not. And then it's like, okay, I guess she didn't. And then she went on to have children and then grandchildren. Like, okay. Yeah. Which, like, she seems like to be, like, a pretty normal citizen. So it's like, it's kind of nice to be like, oh, Harley was able to kind of become rehabilitated and become a normal person, kind of. Mm-hmm. Like, she didn't, go on just being... Because, I mean, the thing with her character is that she is sort of emotionally and mentally manipulated to be, to be with the Joker and to do what he says. Because she falls... Like, there's an episode of... I don't think it's Batman, like, the original animated series. Batman the Animated Series, I think it's because there was, like, a sequel show that's like the New Adventures of Batman or something like that. I think it's an episode of that where it gets into her backstory. And it's like she was a psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum, and she was, like, having, therapy sessions with the Joker. But instead of her trying to rehabilitating him, it kind of went the opposite, where he kind of started driving her mad, and she fell in love with him, and then and then their relationship continued to be, like, a kind of horrible abusive relationship. So
yeah,
it's like all the bad things she's done is because of the Joker's manipulation, not because she's herself is an evil person. So she's a very tragic character typically. So it's kind of nice to see that in this continuity, like, she was able to move on from that.
It's Joker's like, he's insane. That's what he is. He laughs at everything, blah, blah, blah. Harley Quinn, like, has that, like, face is, like, the same at a face value, right? Just laughing at everything, smiling all the time. And then you go into your backstory and it's just like, this is just sad. Like, why would you do this to somebody?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think the episode that was her backstory, I think it was titled, like, Mad Love or something like that, which is pretty fitting title. But it's weird because like there's a lot of like people kind of like, oh, we have a relationship like Joker and Harley Quinn. Like they put him up as like this amazing relationship, and I'm like, no.
Don't.
No. Do you know what Joker and Harley Quinn is like? Like, do you know what their relationship is really like? Are you sure? Pretty sure. Like, unless you have a horrible abusive relationship, I don't think you should be comparing yourself to.
No, that sounds like
Joker
a cry
and
for
Harley
help
Quinn.
to me.
Yeah. Or they just don't understand the characters.
Right.
And they're like, oh, we're a bit crazy. Ooh. Like, yeah, okay. I think it goes beyond just them being a little bit crazy. But there's like many examples in like that show and other versions, but specifically in like the animated series, because that's where the character was first created, of like Joker just fucking like slapping her and punching her and like just physically abusing her. I mean, obviously he mentally and emotionally abuses her and like verbally, but also like physically as well, like just completely horrible.
I think superhero nerds treat Joker and Harley Quinn the same way that literature nerds treat Romeo and Juliet.
Oh yeah, where it's like it's this amazing like relationship. And it's
except
like,
not at all. It's like, no, you have absolutely no understanding of what this actually is. Please stop.
Except Joker and Harley Quinn actually had a worse relationship. Like Romeo and Juliet, it was like they were really in love, but it ended in tragedy because of like
the whole thing with Romeo and Juliet is that they met each other like less than a week before they killed each other over it, or killed themselves over it.
Yeah, which is also not. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But at least they weren't like, they didn't abuse each other. That's as far as I remember. I don't really remember Romeo and Juliet that much.
I don't think they did, and that is definitely a plus.
Whereas, Harley Quinn and the Joker, Joker is just a complete abuser. Terrible. Well, and it's been shown many times in a lot of in the stories too that like the Joker doesn't really love her. He just kind of uses her to get what he wants. Like she is fully madly in love with him, but like it doesn't go both ways. But like he pretends like he does, but it's like, So, but yeah, no. Anyways, that whole rant aside, it is very nice to see sort of, it was nice to see at the end, she's kind of like, I told you guys not to get into this bad stuff. Like, what are you doing?
I try to create a home for you and you do this.
Yeah. But like, that's a good thing because it kind of shows that like she did kind of grow to become like, she did end up being able to live a normal life again, being like a good person, which is really nice to see, because it's like because like the Joker obviously was dead, so he didn't have that hold on her anymore,
right?
But yeah, it is, at least this version of Harley Quinn, which actually is technically the original version of Harley Quinn, right? Because this is in the same continuity as her original incarnation. So yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say. What about you?
I'm all good over here.
All right. So that's about all for this week's episode of WABAN. Let us know in the comments what you think of the movie, of Batman, of anything we talked about. And join us next week when we finish talking about season 2 of Justice League. So actually technically finish talking about Justice League overall. We might continue going into the show Justice League Unlimited just to kind of finish off the whole show, because Justice League Unlimited realistically is a continuation of Justice League, just with way more characters. That's essentially the premise of Justice League Unlimited. It's the Justice League, but with way more superheroes added on to the team.
Okay.
That's essentially. I don't know if you knew that, actually.
I didn't at all. No.
Yeah, I think that's why it's called Unlimited, because it's like, yeah, it's like pretty much any DC superhero that you can think of is like in it, kind of. So yeah. So yeah, we're gonna finish season 2 of Justice League next week, so definitely look forward to that. That'll be Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time, because that is when every single new episode of this podcast is released. So definitely be ready for that. And you can check out the podcast on multiple different platforms. The podcast is on our YouTube channel, which is called WABAN. There's a link in the description to that. You can check that out. We have on that channel all of the podcasts, episodes of the podcast, and we also have a gaming series we did on Portal and Portal 2. All those videos are there, so you can check those out if you want to watch me play Portal, the Portal games, and watch Cub help me along the way. More like drag me along the way, because I just suck that much at it. So yeah, and we're planning on doing some gaming videos in the future. We just aren't sure when we'll have time to do them yet, but at some point we will. So definitely go subscribe to WABAN on YouTube. You can also listen to the podcast on multiple audio platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts and many other audio platforms. You could also check out my YouTube channel, which is called Nim TV. That's NIM TV. My most recent video is also about Batman. So if you want to hear me talk about Batman more, definitely check that out. It's a video talking about the Dark Knight trilogy. So yeah, definitely check that out. Anyways, thank you all for listening to WABAN. I've been Nim.
And I'm Cub.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.